whole look thing. You know what I mean? That look thing. The hair. I mean, is that your natural hair?
This is it. It's all mine.
No way.
Yes,
really?
pull it. Pull it. You can see.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
Jermaine Stewart's secret boyfriend just exposed the heartbreaking truth about his death, his and the Magic Johnson rumors that almost destroyed his legacy.
People who in the back of their mind think that this might be a relationship disease.
Because the truth about Jermaine's private life was hidden, complicated, and dangerous to talk about, especially in an era when being a gay black man with HIV meant you could lose everything.
At that time, when your friend contracts something, and keep in mind, our opinion about it then is if somebody gets it, they get skinny and they die.
Jermaine tried to keep going, recording music, battling his health issues, and staying out of the spotlight. But the industry had already made up its mind, and even in death, the silence around his story was deafening. So, what exactly happened to him? Before the world even knew who Jermaine Stewart was, there were whispers. Whispers about his voice, his style, his walk, his friends, and eventually, his lovers. He never confirmed the rumors, but he didn't deny them either. And in the 1980s music industry, that silence spoke volumes. Jermaine Stewart was one of the few black male pop stars of his time to be flamboyant, expressive, and proudly different, at a time when the world was anything but welcoming to queer black men. The industry made sure of that. And the public? Even worse. He didn't shout about his sexuality from rooftops, but he didn't hide it either. Whether it was the way he styled his hair, the sensuality in his performances, or the people he surrounded himself with, Jermaine made a choice to be himself, even if the world wasn't ready.
See my face.
But see, that's the look. You have this whole look thing. You know what I mean? That look thing. The hair. I mean, is that your natural hair?
This is it. It's all mine.
No way.
Yes,
really?
pull it. Pull it. You can see.
Jermaine was born William Jermaine Stewart in Columbus, Ohio, on September 7, 1957. But everything changed when his family relocated to Chicago in the early 70s. It was there that young Jermaine got his first break, dancing on Soul Train. That one opportunity sparked a friendship with fellow dancers Jody Watley and Jeffrey Daniel, who later became founding members of Shalimar. Jermaine auditioned too, but he didn't get in. Still, he didn't stop dancing. He toured with Shalimar anyway as a backup dancer, and that perseverance led him to the big leagues, working with Culture Club and eventually landing a solo deal with Arista Records. In 1986, he became a household name with his breakout hit, We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off. The song exploded. Top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Dance floors across the globe. Constant rotation on MTV. But that wasn't what made the song legendary. It was the message. At the height of the epidemic, when fear and misinformation about gay men were everywhere, Jermaine dropped a song about intimacy without sex, about saying no, about connection beyond the physical. To many, it was a catchy pop tune, but to others, especially in the LGBTQ+ community, it was an anthem, a survival statement, a quiet protest wrapped in melody. But even as his music was embraced, Jermaine himself wasn't. His style was called too much. His persona was confusing. Behind the scenes, executives didn't know what to do with a gay black male pop star. They didn't say it out loud, but they made it clear in other ways. Limited promotion, small budgets, and radio silence when his next singles dropped. He would later release albums like Say It Again and what becomes a legend most. But none of them matched the impact of his 1986 smash. And the more his record sales dipped, the more the public and the industry distanced itself from him. Behind closed doors, things were worse. Jermaine, like many gay men of his time, faced constant fear. Not just of being outed, but of catching a virus that was destroying entire communities. AIDS didn't just kill bodies, it killed careers. Even the rumor that someone was sick was enough to make them vanish from public life. Jermaine knew that, and according to those close to him, he kept his HIV status a secret for years, quietly, painfully, even as his body started to change, even as the industry stopped calling, even as the fans who once screamed his name moved on to the next big thing. But the truth was always there, hiding behind the music videos and dance moves. Jermaine Stewart wasn't just a pop star. He was a black gay man in the 80s and 90s music machine, and the machine chewed him up and spat him out. What most people didn't know until much later was that Jermaine had been in love. Not just flings, real relationships. And one of those relationships, according to insiders, nearly changed everything. But it never made it into the headlines. Until the whispers started again. This time about a different man. A man the world knew very well. What followed would shake Jermaine's world, and the world of sports, forever.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
When Magic Johnson stepped onto that stage in 1991 and told the world he had contracted AIDS, the news hit like a bomb. A heterosexual black male athlete, one of the most celebrated figures in American sports, admitting he had the virus people still wrongly called the gay disease. It upended everything people thought they knew. But behind the headlines, behind the applause for his courage, another story began to circulate. Quietly, in hushed conversations, in gay clubs, in industry rooms. People started whispering one name, Jermaine Stewart. It wasn't random. At the time, rumors swirled that Jermaine and Magic had been intimately involved, secretly. Some even claimed that Magic had bought Jermaine an expensive BMW. Others said their friendship had gone back years, and that the relationship had deeper emotional roots than most realized. None of it was confirmed. Not publicly, not in court, not in any interview. But in the vacuum of truth, speculation grew, especially since Jermaine himself was now looking visibly ill and still not saying much. What made the rumors stick wasn't just gossip, it was timing. By 1991, Jermaine's health had started to deteriorate. Insiders noted his drastic weight loss. His public appearances became rare, and when he did show up, he looked frail, guarded, exhausted. The whispers grew louder. People wanted to know, was Jermaine the reason Magic had to retire? Was he the source of the virus that shook the NBA to its core?
I will now become a spokesman for the HIV virus because I want people and young people to realize that they can practice safe.
But here's what makes the story even darker. Jermaine never got the kind of compassion Magic did. There were no standing ovations, no press conferences, no ad campaigns to destigmatize in the music industry. Instead, Jermaine got silence. He got blackballed. He got blamed. And the man who could have defended him, who could have set the record straight, Magic Johnson, never addressed the rumor directly. Not once. Jermaine ran. He ran from the cameras, from the gossip, from the shame that wasn't even his to carry. Some of his closest friends say the rumor broke him, not just because of the lie itself, but because of what it cost him. His dignity, his privacy, his peace, and maybe someone he loved. Because according to one man, someone who allegedly dated Jermaine in secret for years, there was a side of the story the public never knew. A story that went far beyond Magic Johnson. A story Jermaine may have taken to the grave. But this man says he's ready to tell it. The whispers didn't end with Jermaine's death. If anything, they got louder. But this time, they came with a voice. Years later, a man who claimed to be Jermaine Stewart's longtime boyfriend finally stepped forward. He didn't want attention. He wasn't chasing money. What he wanted was to tell the truth. The truth Jermaine never got to share while he was alive. According to him, their relationship spanned several years, quietly tucked away from the public eye. They weren't seen together at award shows. They didn't take red carpet photos. They barely existed in the same public spaces. But in private, it was real. From holidays spent indoors to hospital visits no one knew about, he claimed to be there through it all. He said Jermaine was deeply afraid of being outed, not because he was ashamed of who he was, but because he knew exactly how the music industry worked. He had already seen what happened to artists who didn't fit the mold. Doors closed, phones stopped ringing, opportunities dried up, so instead, Jermaine chose to live two lives, the one on stage and the one behind closed doors. One of the most shocking claims from this boyfriend was that Jermaine had been writing a book, not just a memoir, but a tell-all. It allegedly named names, famous ones, men in music, film, and sports who, like Jermaine, were living in secret. But unlike Jermaine, they had the power and protection to keep their secrets buried. The book, according to him, was never meant to hurt anyone. It was meant to free Jermaine from the burden of silence. He was tired of living a lie, tired of pretending that his music was all he had to offer. He wanted people to know the real him, what he felt, what he feared, and who he loved. But the book never surfaced. Some say it was stolen. Others say he burned it. There were even rumors that he was paid off to destroy it. But in the end, it disappeared, just like so many pieces of Jermaine's life that were never allowed to be seen. The boyfriend also described Jermaine's final years as incredibly painful, not just physically, but emotionally. He said Jermaine felt abandoned by the same people who had once called him a trailblazer. Collaborators avoided him. Industry friends vanished. And everywhere he went, people looked at him like he was a rumor walking. He was hurt most by the speculation connecting him to Magic Johnson. According to the boyfriend, Jermaine never spoke about it publicly because he was afraid no one would believe him, and even more afraid that people already had. That rumor wasn't just gossip. It followed him like a shadow and fed into the stigma he tried so hard to avoid. What this man described wasn't the story of a pop star. It was the story of a man who wanted to love openly, live honestly, and be remembered as more than a scandal. And in his eyes, Jermaine didn't die from he died from the silence that surrounded him. Jermaine Stewart never stood a chance, not in the industry he was trying to conquer. On paper, he had everything: a Billboard Top 5 hit, a unique sound, undeniable stage presence, and the kind of charisma that lit up television screens. But behind the scenes, none of that could protect him, not from what the industry had already decided about him. They didn't say it outright. No one told him, "You're too gay for this business." But the message came through in every quiet dismissal, every meeting that never happened, every marketing budget that disappeared. Jermaine's flamboyance wasn't celebrated. It was seen as risky, dangerous even. And for a black male artist in the 1980s, that was a death sentence for a career. The record labels couldn't figure out how to sell him. He wasn't masculine enough for urban radio, and he was too unapologetic for the sanitized version of pop they preferred. Executives whispered about his image needing to be toned down. Managers started urging him to be more relatable. Some even encouraged him to invent a fake girlfriend, just to keep fans comfortable. Jermaine refused, and that refusal, while brave, came at a cost. After the massive success of "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," his follow-up projects were almost destined to fail. The album, Say It Again, was musically solid, and the title track even charted decently in some countries. But it was clear the label wasn't pushing it. They weren't booking the same interviews, funding the same visuals, or creating the same momentum. His third and fourth albums, What Becomes a Legend, Most and Set Me Free, were quietly released with little to no support, and by the early 90s, Jermaine's name had all but vanished from the charts. His songs were still playing in clubs, but the industry had moved on. Or, more accurately, the industry had pushed him out. There were rumors of behind-the-scenes battles with his label. Jermaine reportedly fought for more creative control, more inclusion, more representation. He was passionate, but they called him difficult. He was outspoken, but they labeled him unstable. And when his health started to fail, it only got worse. People stopped returning calls. Producers he once worked with pretended not to know him. When he would show up at events, there were awkward silences, strange looks, and quick exits. Everyone in the industry was playing it safe, especially when HIV was involved. And no one wanted their brand tied to a man the tabloids were already speculating about. Jermaine had helped shape the sound of a generation. But the moment he needed the industry to stand by him, they vanished. And the saddest part? He saw it coming. Friends say he knew the second the music stopped selling, the love would stop too. Not because of talent, but because of fear. By the early 1990s, Jermaine Stewart was fading from the spotlight. Not because he'd lost his talent, not because people stopped loving "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," but because the industry had turned its back on him. And when the music stops and the cameras move on, what's left is the silence. And Jermaine was drowning in it. His health was the first visible sign that something was wrong. Those who saw him during that time described him as thinner, weaker, more withdrawn. He was battling AIDS, though he kept it private, not because he was ashamed, but because he knew what would happen if people found out. This was still a time when HIV was seen as a curse, a career killer, a scarlet letter. People assumed it meant recklessness, sin, or worse, And in Jermaine's case, all three were used against him.
They show you how people are, but they used to think it was a black and only gay disease.
He continued to make music despite the illness. In fact, some say the songs he was working on in his final years were some of his most personal. But he no longer had the machine to promote it. He didn't have the label support, the PR budget, the tour slots. What he had was a voice, a pen, and a shrinking circle of real friends. As his condition worsened, Jermaine's world became smaller. Gone were the dancers, the backup singers, the executives who once cheered him on. In their place were long hospital visits, late nights filled with pain, and moments of reflection that no one captured on tape. Financially, things were rough. Despite the millions that Frantic Romantic generated, Jermaine didn't die a wealthy man. Mismanagement, medical costs, and years of declining record sales had drained his finances. He wasn't broke in the street sense, but he wasn't living like a pop star anymore either. He was living like a man trying to survive. Some say he started distancing himself even from those who cared. Not because he didn't want company, but because he didn't want to be seen like that. Not sick, not vulnerable, not dying. He wanted people to remember him in leather pants and high boots, dancing across neon stages, not curled up in a hospital bed, tired from just walking down the hall. On March 17, 1997, Jermaine Stewart passed away in Homewood, Illinois. He was just 39 years old. The cause of death was related liver cancer. Quiet, quick, almost unnoticed by the media. There was no huge tribute, no award show montage, no public outpouring of grief. Years passed before his gravesite even received a headstone. For nearly 2 decades, it sat unmarked, like the industry had erased him altogether. And maybe that's the final tragedy of Jermaine Stewart's story. Not that he died young, but that when he needed the world most, it turned away. And when he finally left, too many people didn't even notice. In the final years of his life, Jermaine Stewart was reportedly working on something that could have rocked the entire entertainment industry. A memoir. Not a sanitized version filled with vague anecdotes and polished, publicist-approved memories. No, this was supposed to be raw, real, unfiltered, and most of all, naming names. According to those close to him, Jermaine had grown tired of being erased. tired of watching people rewrite history while pretending he never existed. He wanted to take back the narrative, tell the truth, not just about himself, but about the people he had loved, worked with, and been betrayed by. And allegedly, some of those names were still on the biggest stages in music and sports. The rumored tell-all was said to include accounts of secret relationships with several closeted celebrities. Not just passing encounters, but emotional connections, some of which allegedly overlapped with men who had families, endorsements, and spotless public images. These weren't just lovers. They were industry giants. And Jermaine, according to insiders, had kept the receipts. But the book never saw the light of day. Some say he kept it hidden in a storage unit. Others claim he typed it on an old computer that was later destroyed or lost. A few insiders whispered that the manuscript was stolen, vanished without a trace, just months before his death. And then there were darker theories. One former friend believed someone paid Jermaine to stay quiet. Not millions, but enough to survive. Just enough to convince him to let go of the fight and focus on peace. Another theory? That he burned the book himself. That in a moment of fear, or weakness, or even mercy, he destroyed the only copy to protect the people he once loved, even if they hadn't protected him. What adds weight to these rumors is how persistent they've been. For decades, people in and around the music industry have spoken of Jermaine's unreleased truth. Some say they saw pages, others say they were warned never to ask about it. But no one has ever come forward with proof. The only thing that seems certain is that Jermaine wanted to tell his story in his own words, and that someone, or something, made sure he never did. The idea of the tell-all has since taken on a mythic quality, not just because of who might have been exposed, but because it represents everything Jermaine never got to say, all the pain he kept bottled up, all the dignity he lost while the industry turned its back on him, all the secrets he carried alone. And maybe that's the cruelest twist of all, that the one thing that could have cleared his name, explained his choices, and validated his truth, disappeared. Just like he did. In any case, Jermaine Stewart was more than a one-hit wonder. He was more than the rumors, more than the silence, more than the disease that took him. He was a trailblazer who walked a lonely road so that others could run. A black, queer artist who dared to exist out loud, even when the cost was everything. The industry tried to forget him. The media looked the other way. And even in death, he was denied the recognition he deserved. But history has a way of circling back, and today, more people are asking questions. More people are uncovering the story behind the smile, the high-pitched vocals, and the legendary track that once lit up every radio station in America. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.